Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Jim Gary is senior writer of National Review. He's also the Three Martini Lunch Pod. I guess you're the host of that or co-host of that. I'm not
Yeah,
sure. And a regular
co-host. Yeah.
contributor. Co-host. All right. Now, Jim, normally I do weekend review, and I'm going to do one story of weekend review, but then I have a twist, a curveball. My weekend review is your reaction to the referral of the CIA to the DOJ of John Brennan's testimony concerning Russia, Russia, Russia. How significant? What do you expect to happen?
If you had to send a CIA official a criminal referral for false testimony, I think I would have gone with Clapper. Back when there was this a very simple question: does the NSA collect information about Americans? And he said very clearly, no. When the answer was yes, so he just missed it by one word. It was just a little bit off. Yeah. So that only and the fact that I mean, Rand Paul would periodically throw blow a gasket over it, but there was no real consequence to it. And so I certainly have no objection to this. If there's, like it certainly would seem like, look, it certainly seems like the Obama crew, when it came to intelligence, felt like they knew what was best. They knew that clearly there had to be some smoking gun out there somewhere, and it was just a matter of looking hard enough. And if they looked, they would eventually find here is, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump laughing in a hot tub together or something like that. And, this is how we're going to skew the election and that, and they never did. But they, certainly acted like it was their job to find out, we will find the smoking gun that will prevent Donald Trump from being elected. And that's not the job of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Now, it seemed to me, and I've told a couple of people already today and other folks, this case maps almost perfectly with my personal obsession of the Alger Hiss case, in that John Brennan as a kid was a communist and grew out of it. Alger Hiss was a communist who didn't grow out of it. They both testified by Congress and they both perjured themselves, allegedly in the case of John Brennan, in which case I'd like to, it's a pretty cut and dried prosecution. Testimony's there, the investigation's here, doesn't take forever to get into it. I would like consequences so as to disincentivize people doing that in the future. But the Clapper problem, I think, is the statute of limitations, which is 5 years. Brennan's testimony was in 2023. I'm not sure when Clapper's was, so I'd have to go back and look. Second bigger question. We've got one reconciliation down. Speaker Johnson says we can do it two more times with this Congress, meaning 51 votes in the Senate. What do you want the president to aim for in round two?
Well, there's no getting around the fact that based on the projections, the last big, beautiful bill was going to increase the deficit. I appreciate the efforts of Doge, but you're not going to see, closing down this branch office here or letting those workers there are not really going to address the deficit and the debt the way I'd like them to. So, look, I'd love to see something resembling entitlement reform. I'd love to see something. And by the way, I should point out, credit where it's due, the big, beautiful bill kind of began the process of nibbling around the edges, doing things like, verifying eligibility for Medicaid, things like that. Democrats reacted like these were these terrible draconian cuts, and you're, Ebenezer Scrooge throwing Tiny Tim out, and it was nothing of the sort. Like, if people who are not eligible for Medicaid payments should not be getting Medicaid payments. It's really not that. It's not that complicated. So something that addressed it, because I don't know. Look, there are guys smarter than me who will tell you whether or not the bond market is going to freak out by all the spending we've gotten. But Hugh, you and I've been on your show for a long time. You and I can remember in the Obama years when the deficit hit $1 trillion, and we were like, "Holy smokes, that's a huge number! Wow, it was a Great Recession." And they said, okay, it's only because of a really weird set of circumstances. Tax revenues are really down. We have to do all this spending. That it went down a little bit, and then we kind of got into the habit of 1.1, 1.2, up to 2 trillion. Then of course COVID hits, and of course, great reduction in tax revenues, great increase of expenditures. Now I think we're on pace for like what, 1.6 trillion this year, like
Yeah,
way
and
more than a
$37 trillion dollar debt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like we just don't, we've never made a serious effort at it, and as a result of it, it never goes down. And
Well,
the
great
numbers that
minds.
used to be scary are now very normal. are kind of par for the course
Great,
now.
great minds think alike. I would like them to bend one of the entitlements, if just a little bit. I think the easiest one to bend, and I wanted to ask you because you're under 55, I'm almost 70. If we said for those who are 55 and younger, you can't retire until you're 66, and we're going to add a month every year for the next 60 years to that retirement, which will get it up to 72 eventually, over 60 years. That would be a big difference. Entitlement reform can be slow, but like a glacier, powerful. What do you think?
Yeah, I have no objection to this. William F. Buckley reportedly died at his desk, and that's how I intend. I don't intend to retire. It's easier to do this when you write for a living. We'll see if my mind keeps functioning as I get into old age, and I'm sure there are plenty of listeners and readers out there who'd say, "Nah, Jim, we're never going to be able to tell. It never worked that well in the first place." But so, for me, the federal retirement age or the recommended retirement age for Social Security, it pretty much doesn't matter. I'll keep working, as long as I'm able to. I'm a little bit frightened about the idea of not getting up every morning, riding the morning jolt, and having that discipline of needing to do something. Some guys, by the way, but I'm glad you're doing this at your somewhat advanced age, Hugh, because there are a bunch of guys.
My wife doesn't want me to retire. That's the key thing is the fetching Mrs. Hewitt said, no, don't retire.
There are a bunch of guys who love what they do, decide it's time to hang it up. And I'm not just talking about Brett Favre. They get into retirement and they realize they don't know what to do with themselves. They realize that the work was their sense of purpose. It was their social network. It was how they they feel very lonely in retirement and stuff like that. So I've seen enough of those stories to kind of be a little bit frightened about the idea of just, you can't just play shuffleboard to play golf for the rest of your life. So,
and I don't think,
but the short version is yes, raise the retirement age. I do not have a problem with that. And I think the more, if you're like, oh, you can't do this for 55, okay, do it for 50-year-olds, do it for 45. Pick a day and say, you know what, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer in life to collect Social Security. We're not talking about a decade later. We're not talking about you having to wait. We'll do it 6 months. We'll do it a year. We'll gradually increase it there. Lifespans are getting longer. People are healthier for longer periods of time. Ozempic is going to make everybody slimmer. We're not going to have back-related and knee-related issues and all these problems that come from diabetes and high blood pressure and weight and all that stuff. People will be able to work for longer. And as a result of that, by the way, all in all, people living longer and needing to support themselves in retirement longer, it's kind of a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have, and that's we are in agreement on what Speaker Johnson and the President and Leader Thune should be thinking about for Reconciliation 2.0 in Trump 2.0. Thank you, Jim Geraghty. Follow him on X at Jim Geraghty. Listen to 3 Martini Lunch and the Editors podcast you cannot miss.